The gospel reading is John 10, verses 7 through 10, and that's found in the New Testament on page 103. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
There are many cultural icons that define the celebration of a new year. The most familiar, at least to us in the United States, is probably that huge descending spear that drops down in Times Square with those hundreds of thousands of people crowded together, and then lights up and says Happy New Year and shows the new year 2019. But we would also, in regards to those icons, we'd include things like fireworks and party hats, champagne, and always celebrations, be they restrained or, in most cases, unbridled. There is also, along with all these things, the local, national, and even global phenomenon of the first birth of the new year, which is recognized in all of the variations of social media. This past week, I Googled New Year baby, right? First New Year's baby. And it was amazing. Every little town and community, not just here in the United States, but all over the world. There was a national New Year's baby, first baby of the new year. There was even an international first baby of the new year. They were everywhere. Where does that come from? Why do we do that? According to an article by Nicole Garner, the relationship between a new birth and a new year began in ancient Greek culture with the celebration of the rebirth of Dionysus, the god of fertility and wine. That is an appropriate connection, kind of, isn't that? Fertility and wine? That makes sense. A standard part of that ancient celebration was a parade, which featured at its head a newborn baby, I'm sure complaining loudly, in a basket, being carried in a basket at the front of the parade. But our contemporary celebration of the first baby of the New Year's, or what we call the New Year's baby, was originated in part by the Saturday Evening Post, a 20th century magazine that between 1906 and 1943 featured the iconic New Year baby on its cover every January. You remember what it looked like. It was the baby wearing a sash that had, and in this year would be 2019 on it. You see that image? And they still use that kind of image in all kinds of places. That article goes on to describe the various prizes and recognitions that are given to the first of the New Year babies all over the world. Loads of stuff. Everything from scholarships to gift certificates to even a year's worth of free diapers. What a deal that one is. So why does this phenomenon persist even into the 21st century? Why is it important for us to recognize the first baby of the new year, or to even image the new year as a baby? Could it be because the new year represents a new start, and babies represent a new life, and we yearn sometimes for a new life. We yearn sometimes for the opportunity to start over again. Or could it be that a newborn baby is an affirmation that life continues in this world, that life continues to face off with death and despair, that which so plagues the human condition? Or is it not true that a new year reminds us that we are a year older? Right? Especially for me. Since my birthday is January the 2nd, I am reminded that it's not only a new year, but I have aged another year. The new year reminds us that we are a year closer to our own deaths, and thus that newborn child becomes for us a symbol of vitality and a symbol for hope. I think that's it. I think we can answer yes to all of those questions, and maybe a few more yeses. The story of the Epiphany of Christ, which we remember this morning on this Epiphany Sunday, represents a kind of a different type of transition as opposed to that celebrated in the rebirth of Dionysus or our celebration of the firstborn life in a new year. The Magi, in their long journey, recognized that their guiding star represented a profound and prophesied change that would transform all things and transform all things for all time. Their gifts were not the normal items of honor and recognition that might be given to a newborn prince in their age, except perhaps for the gold, which would be traditionally given to a newborn prince. Frankincense and myrrh, though both very valuable and very rare in the time of Christ, were items usually given to honor the passing, the death, the passing of a leader. They were the spices of death, used by the ancient world to anoint a body, to stave off the effects and odor of decay. The Magi did not bring a year's worth of diapers or a scholarship to gift the Christ child, who was probably, when they arrived, about 3 years old, as we understand it in the Greek, in the New Testament. About 3 years old. Instead, they placed gifts at the feet of Jesus that anticipated the purpose and the meaning of his life. They gave him gold to recognize the value of his life to all the world and to recognize the spiritual age to come. And they placed before him spices to define the very means by which that age would be initiated. And now we hear Jesus, many years later from that moment, saying these words to his disciples. Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Listen to that again. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Let's go back to thinking about what happens when that first baby of the new year arrives and receives an abundance of what? Material things. Why? Because material things kind of reflect the limitations of human joy in this world. It's what we can give. Material stuff. And that's true. In the age of Shakespearean poetry, Sir Francis Bacon wrote these stanzas. the worlds above, and the life of man less than a span. In his conception, wretched, from the tomb, so to the tomb, nursed from his cradle, and brought up to years with cares and fears. What then remains but that we still should cry for being born, and being born to die? Not a real optimistic poem, as you heard. But in John's Gospel, Christ answers the poet's cry of despair when he declares to the world that he came to offer not an abundance of stuff, but an abundance of life. Think about that. Not abundance in life, but an abundance of life. More life than we could ever expect to have. That's an interesting statement. We don't think enough about what Jesus is saying there. An abundance of life. And that is why we who are gathered here this morning, for us, the symbol of the new year is not a date on the calendar, an ascending spear, or the image of a newborn baby. For us, the symbol of the new year is a gate that is opened by the death and the resurrection of the Son of God. A gate that opens to a life that does not end with a final breath or a stilling of a beating heart. So what does that mean for us? Martin Luther King said this: when we look at modern man, we have to face the fact that modern man suffers from a kind of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast to his scientific and technological abundance. We've learned to fly the air like birds. We've learned to swim the seas like fish. And yet, we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters. Walking the earth as sisters and brothers is the abundant life given to us as disciples of Jesus Christ. Added to that is the promise of eternal life at the end of that journey. So life is abundant for us, spiritually abundant for us here and now, and spiritually abundant for us forever. This table of Holy Communion is our gateway this morning into the abundant life of Christian love. A love to which all of us are invited. A love to which all of us are invited to give. We all know, you and I know, that in a fallen world, a fallen universe such as ours, time is a thief. Time is a thief, robbing us of the things we value from the moment of our first breath: health, family, comfort, possessions, relationships. Time is a thief. But at this table, this gateway, we hear another word, and we hear that word in another language, the language of love. It is the voice of a shepherd calling us to still waters, calling us to green pastures, calling us to a cup that quenches every thirst for all time. This is our new life. This is our rebirth. And we refresh the energy of that life. We refresh the purpose of that life when we share the body and the blood of the one who was born to die for us. Born to die, but for us. So let us come now to this gate Let us come now to this table and let the Lord embrace us into God's safe keeping. Not just for this new year, but for all time. Let this be the place of our rebirth. Amen. As we prepare to share the table, let us stand and sing our hymn.